Hey, I'm T.A. Charlie, and welcome to the Road to Concord with Professor Joe Bakanovic. Homeroom is on Rumble. You just go to Rumble and search channels for the Road to Concord. It's one word. When you find it, you go ahead and you click follow. It might mean you got to set up an account, but it's fast, it's easy, it's free. I did it, you can do it. For those technologically challenged members of the class, you can also catch us on Facebook and YouTube. After the show, it's uploaded to Podbean, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and BitChute. Just look for The Road to Concord. You can go to the blog page, that's theroadtoconcord.com. That's where you'll find all your show notes, study notes, and handouts for the class. The phone is working. If you don't know how to call in, email us and we'll think about it. Finally, you can email a professor at joe@theroadtoconcord.com. He's a little slow, but he'll eventually get around to emailing you back. This show is currently mainly listener-sponsored. If you are interested in advertising your business on the show, please email us. With that said, we ask for your participation on a value-for-value basis. If you find our show of value to you, then you provide an equivalent portion of your labor and treasure through the donate link on the Road to Concord blog page, the show description on Rumble, and in the comments on the other streams. And thank you to all of you who have and will support this show.
Good morning. Welcome to the Road to Concord. Today is Tuesday, June 30th, 2026. I'm your host, Joe Bakanovic. Charlie, I still think you're having delusions of grandeur with this. If you are interested in advertising your business on our show, nobody's going to advertise with us, right?
Yeah, I think there's only two businesses advertising, and one's yours and one's
and you
mine.
put them both up. Hey, are we paying ourselves for these advertisements? I'm sorry, folks. It's just,
it's a tax deduction, right?
Yeah, I wish you. It's a write-off.
Can't we pay ourselves for the advertising and deduct it from our bit? I don't know.
You got to make money before you can do that. This is a loss leader, man. Hint, wink, wink. No, Natasha, we're not doing that. This is all because I got to get in a better mood before we do the show. Because Deltros hurt my feelings. He wouldn't play along. Anyhow, if you're not part of the chat, you wouldn't understand. There's a pre-show chat going on Rumble, and he was being mean. So y'all give Deltros a hard time for me today. All right, we're in Genesis again today. We're starting in chapter 33. We'll tackle two chapters today as best we can. Again, I am reading from the NASB 1995 translation of the scriptures. And we're only going to do two chapters because next week we've got to tackle, I think it's the first time we encounter the phrase in the Hebrew anyway. That is a big stumbling block for a lot of believers. So we'll tackle that next week. For today, chapter 33, verse 1. If you'll remember, Jacob is sending all these gifts ahead of him to meet his brother Esau. So that's where we left off last week. It says, then Jacob lifted his eyes and looked, and behold, Esau was coming, and 400 men with him. So still a little worried here. So he divided the children among Leah and Rachel and the two maids. He put the maids and their children in front, and Leah and her children next, and Rachel and Joseph's last. He's protecting Rachel and Joseph. But he himself passed on ahead of them and bowed down to the ground 7 times until he came near to his brother. There's that number 7 again. 3 and 7, 3 and 7, 3 and 7. These numbers echo throughout the scriptures over and over again. 7 being the number of completion, if you'll remember, amongst other things. It's considered to be one of the perfect numbers in the biblical texts. Verse 4, that Esau ran to meet him and embraced him. Now, folks, if he actually ran, that's a break in etiquette, and that's considered unseemly. Older men do not, patriarchs don't run. They just don't do that. That's part of why in the prodigal son, when the father runs to meet him, it's not expected. It's unusual in their culture. He says he ran to meet him and fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. So in other words, he grabbed him around the neck or whatever, and he gave him a kiss. This is a real enthusiastic welcoming. And he lifted his eyes and he saw the women and the children, and he said, "Who are these with you?" So he said, "The children whom Elohim has graciously given your servant." So now Jacob is calling himself Esau's servant, and that's contrary to the blessing that his father gave him. He's still trying to supplicate Esau, make sure that there's no animosity between them. Verse 6, then the maids came near with their children, and they bowed down. Leah likewise came near with her children, and they bowed down. And afterwards, Joseph came near with Rachel, and they bowed down. And he said, "What do you mean by all this company which I have met?" This is Esau. And he said, "Jacob, you got to pay attention to how the he's are going on here. To find favor in the sight of my Lord." So you see, Jacob's wanting to make sure that he does what he can to appease Esau in case Esau is still angry with him all these years. But Esau said, "I have plenty, my brother. Let what you have be your own." Now, this is very Middle Eastern. Esau might very well want all that stuff, but honor requires, and hospitality and all requires Esau to refuse it. Jacob said, "No, please. If now I have found favor in your sight, then take my present from my hand." So Jacob is saying the second or third time, no, I want you to have it. This is how this works in their culture. "For I see your face as one who sees the face of Elohim, and you have received me favorably." So Jacob is saying, I see that you're not angry with me. And I feel as though my life has been spared as one who sees the face of Elohim. So normally, if you see the face of God, you die. So Jacob is telling Esau, I see you're going to let me spare me. So he says, "Please take my gift, which has been brought to you, because Elohim has dealt graciously with me, because I have plenty." Thus he urged him, and he took it. So Esau accepted the gifts, all those animals that had gone before him. This is typical, quintessential haranguing in the Middle East. This is just the way their culture works. We have similar things in our culture we don't even see or notice. This would have been, by original audience, this would have been read as, okay, this is how we know Jacob really means to give these things to his brother, and Esau accepts them. That's how Esau really knows that it's an earnest and sincere gift. Then Esau said, "Let us take our journey and go, and I will go before you." So Esau wants Jacob to follow him. But he said to him, "My Lord knows that the children are frail, and that the flocks and the herds which are nursing are a care to me." In other words, he's got to take care of them. They're a responsibility to Jacob. "And if they are driven hard one day, all the flocks will die. Please let my Lord pass on before his servant, and I will proceed at my leisure, according to the pace of the cattle that are before me, and according to the pace of the children, until I come to my Lord and Seir." All right. So Jacob is going to ask Esau to let him just follow at a more leisurely pace. And Esau's eventually going to say okay to this, but Seir is going to be down in this area here. This is where Edom is. I know that some maps is going to put Seir up here northeast of Jerusalem. That I think is something different. I think we're talking, because Seir is in the land of Edom. And Mount Seir is located in Edom region, southeast of the Salt Sea, now part of Saudi Arabia. Edom was settled by Esau, the twin brother of Jacob. This land was promised to them by Elohim, by Yahweh. Genesis 36, 8-9. We'll get to that here in the next couple of weeks when Esau moves. But this right here is the area where, because he's coming from up here. And I don't know where. I think in Gilead, right in this area here, is where this particular chapter is taking place, where they meet. And Esau is going to go back to Edom. And we're going to see Jacob says he's going to follow him, but he doesn't. He does something else instead. So didn't mean to do that. Let's make that go down. And we'll continue. So Esau said, please let me leave you with some of the people who are with me. Now, we don't know if this is a genuine offer to leave help with Jacob or a spies or leaving some people to try and control Jacob. We don't know. But we can see how Jacob replies. He's still a little wary. But he said, Jacob said, what need is there? Let me find favor in the sight of my Lord. So in other words, trust me. There's no need for you to leave people here. Show me some trust and kindness. So Esau returned that day on his way to Seir. And Jacob journeyed to Succoth and built for himself a house and made booths for his livestock there. Therefore, the place is named Succoth. Now that is here. This is the general area down here in the bottom right-hand corner. Succoth is up here. And let's see, Mitzpah and Gilead is in this area here. So, in other words, Jacob stops short of where he's supposed to go because Seir's still way down to the southeast of this map. And here's Succoth in this area here. This is the Jordan Valley. So this should be very well watered. And that's where we see that Jacob is going to end up stopping. And then it says Jacob settles in Shechem. Verse 18, now Jacob came safely to the city of Shechem, which is in the land of Canaan, when he came from Paddan Aram, that's up where Laban lives, and he camped before the city. He bought the piece of land where he had pitched his tent from the hand of the sons of Hamor. All right, that's important. He buys the land. So now he not only has the spiritual claim to the land given to him by Yahweh, he now has a physical claim to the land in the fact that he's got a deed to property in that part of the world. So this is where Israel finally has both a spiritual and worldly claim to this land. We also have part of it through Abraham, but Abraham is not yet Israel. So the Hebrews have a claim to the land as well as the Israelites. Shechem's father, he bought it for 100 pieces of money, pieces of silver. Then he erected there an altar and called it El Eloha Israel. Charlie, let's do a little. This is Genesis 33, verse 20. Let's find that real quick. What is, because I wanted to look that word up, but I didn't.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's two words here.
I didn't get a chance to look
all right,
it up
3
either,
words.
but...
Okay, so they hyphenated it in our translation, but we know it's El, which means, Elohim, God type of thing. So he's calling this God's Israel.
Yeah. And when that happens in Hebrew,
all right,
this is generally an emphatic. It's an emphatic to draw attention to that. It means indeed, super, pay attention here. This is for sure what I'm saying here. It's a point of emphasis when you see words repeated like this.
All right. So we don't know exactly what do you have any idea what he means by this? Because this is a case where I know Eloah, plural, or at least I think that is.
Well, LOA is, go ahead and let's see. It's just, I believe that's a construct. So it would be God of Israel.
Okay, so God of Israel. All right, so he's, in other words, Yahweh is in this place.
Right.
Okay, that'd be a good one then. So let's keep going here. The significance of Shechem. I'll just read through this. This is on Bible Hub. It'll become a city of refuge in Numbers. It's within the tribal allotments. The Levites receive 48 towns, but there's 6 cities of refuge. It's going to be one of the 6 cities of refuge, Shechem. It's Genesis 12, 6 through 7. Abraham reaches Shechem and Yahweh appears and puts up an altar. It's the first physical marker of Yahweh's covenant in the land. From the very start, Shechem becomes a testimony that Yahweh's promises will take shape on real soil. In Genesis 33, 18 through 20, which we're reading now, Jacob buys a plot from Hamor's clan and erects an altar, El Eloah El Israel. The site now bears both a legal deed and a spiritual landmark, anchoring Israel's identity. And we're going to have hard lessons, Dinah and the reckoning, the violation. We're going to read that here in a minute, of Dinah and the violent response of Simeon and Levi unfold at Shechem. The episode exposes sin's cost while underscoring Israel's need for righteous boundaries later modeled in the city of refuge system. It's going to become part of the inheritance for Joseph's house. Genesis 48:22, Jacob grants Joseph an extra ridge at Shechem, foreshadowing future possession by Ephraim and Manasseh. And in Joshua 17, it records that those tribes settled the surrounding highlands, securing the promise. It's going to be connected to refuge and redemption. Shechem's legal role, Numbers 35, Joshua 27. Shechem is officially set apart for accidental manslayers, for manslaughter. Practical mercy unfolds here. The avenger's sword is restrained until due process, a living illustration of Yahweh's justice tempered by grace. It's also going to be connected to covenantal renewal. Promises kept by Joseph's bones laid to rest there. Seasons of turmoil and division. Echoes into the New Testament. Why Shechem matters today. It's a stage where God's presence, people, and justice intersect. A reminder that covenant faithfulness is lived out in ordinary geography and daily choices. It's a witness to fulfilled prophecy, encouraging confidence that every remaining promise in Scripture will likewise stand. Why is all this an importance to us? One of the things I'm learning, I'm still studying this this book on Hebrew philosophy. One of the things that I've been learning is that the author Drew Johnson, he argues that the Hebrew philosophy is done through pixelated, interconnected reasoning. Okay, you've heard me, if you've been with me for any length of time, you've heard me say this myself, but different ways. When he means by pixelated, I use pieces of the puzzle. And when he says interrelated or intertwined or interwoven, that's me with when I say that all of these stories are intertwined with each other. It's kind of like spaghetti or the pieces of a tapestry or connecting the fireflies. I've been using different terms to discuss the exact same things that this author's seeing. And I've been using them for years before I read this book. Others are doing the same things. They use different language for the same thing. Why these stories are so important is they are used by the prophets and especially the New Testament authors. And they'll bring up little pieces of these stories expecting you know them, expecting you to fill in the missing pieces of their arguments. They expect you to fill in. Okay, it's like, oh, I don't know. Let's go with the oldest one. You know, if I mention something about Luke, you know, and his quest to try and save the princess or whatever, I'm expecting you to fill in the New Hope, the original first Star Wars movie that was ever released back in 74, 75, somewhere in there. I'm expecting you to fill in some of the details. You know who the princess is, you know, the backstory or whatever. The Bible does this a lot. And that's how the Hebrew mind wants you to do philosophy. The purpose is to get you to think past just what is being said. Charlie, did you have something you wanted to say?
Dang touchpad, I gotta figure out a way to disable that.
So Charlie's still having trouble with his hardware. So anyhow, the reason we need these stories is, especially in the New Testament, if you don't have these stories firmly in your head and in your mind, you're going to miss big parts of what the New Testament authors intend for you to have in the forefront of your minds while they're talking to you. It's like people will say, well, when the Messiah says, as in the days of Noah, well, all he's talking about is, you know, people were surprised when the rain came. No, that's not all he's talking about. When he says, as in the days of Noah, he's bringing up a whole lot of That is a big idea, especially in the Second Temple period. He's bringing up the entire Enochian material, all the material of Enoch. And in their culture, in their day and age, that would have been in the forefront of the audience's mind, is the Enochian story. First Enoch, second, third, fourth Enoch. Well, that's going to bring up the demons, the watchers, and the fallen angels, and it's going to bring up the lake of fire. It's going to bring up all sorts of imagery. And it will bring up the story of Noah. And it'll also bring up what the Messiah adds to it. This is why he adds they'll be giving and taking in marriage and blah, 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 blah. Because that commentary is not prevalent in As the Days of Noah. That wouldn't have been as prevalent in their thinking. So he brings all of that up and he adds to it to focus it a little bit. This happens a lot in your scriptures, especially with Paul. It's one of the reasons Paul is so difficult for modern readers to understand. Paul expects you to know the scriptures and to fill in for him. And when you understand, that's why I say, if you read Paul with a Torah observant Hebrew cultural mindset, an ancient Near East Torah observant Hebrew cultural mindset, meaning you know the Old Testament well, Paul makes sense, makes really good sense, makes tight, logical sense. But if you don't have that background, then the things Paul says, you're going to take the wrong way. And you're going to get Paul wrong. Guaranteed. And in some cases, yes, it is doctrinal problems. Yes, sir.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, you know, we see this within the Bible, but we also see it even in our more recent history. For example, you know, on Fridays, we're going through the scepter and the birthright and those kind of things. Much of what Alan is discussing in his book was more or less common knowledge in both, you know, England and the United States during that time period. These ideas were very prevalent during that time, and we have lost that over the, you know, past
that's
100 years or
100
so.
years ago.
Yeah. And so we can see that happening even with our more recent literature. So it's so important that we do our best to bring ourselves back to the original history, language, and culture in which these things were done. That's one of the reasons why we focus on that so much, because otherwise you will get wrapped around the axle and you will miss stuff, and you can really twist doctrine, you know, like you said, and get in trouble doctrinally.
The founding fathers, and I'm going to be doing a special Friday after the Friday
that'll be
show.
good.
I'm going to do an additional.
That's another good example.
They told us, if you want to interpret the laws, take yourself back to the time and language in which the law was written and try to examine the spirit, the intent of the law. Hebrew philosophy is the same way. They want you to understand the purpose of Yahweh's commandments so that you can, when we say rightly divide the word, in other words, rightly interpret and apply that intention in whatever circumstances you may find yourself, whatever culture you may find yourself.
Right. And that's what you got. The Declaration of Independence and the Constitution is their attempt at doing that in the creation of our government. You're probably going to cover that in detail on your special show. But
the Declaration is the spirit, the Constitution is the letter of. So, and if like we had a ruling just yesterday, and I know we're going a little astray, but I'm kind of dragging this out, so we'll handle chapter 34 in the next half hour. But this is relevant. This goes to how we do things, even in the Bible. The court yesterday ruled, well, the letter of the law says that, you know, whatever, a mail-in ballot doesn't have to be counted the day of the election. Okay, fine. They say it's just got to be postmarked the day of the election. Well, in case you haven't noticed, the post office has stopped putting the date that your mail is mailed. They did that a long time ago. So that won't work. So essentially what the Supreme Court just ruled was I can still be voting by mail in the 2020 election or the 2012 or the 2001. Okay, they've made a mess because they wouldn't do something very simple. The founding fathers would have said, okay, take yourself back to the time that this law was written. What's the supreme law of the land? United States Constitution. What does it say? You will have an election day. Have you ever gone and looked up day in a legal dictionary? It means that 24-hour period, that date. And it also further usually implies the business hours of that date. So anything that comes in after that date, or technically before it, should not be counted according to the Constitution. And then when we start looking for ways around the law, getting legalistic, that's when we make a mess of things. Founding fathers would not like the way we vote today. I don't think they would have ever allowed it because it allows for cheating.
Yeah.
And if you think the founding fathers were friends of government, whoo, no.
Mm-hmm.
They flat said it was a necessary evil. A necessary evil. So, and this is, where did they get all this from? They got this from the Bible, folks. One of the very first things that Yahweh's people have always done when they move to a new area is they set up a court system and a legal system. That is an indicative. That's one of the ways you can trace Yahweh's people, is they immediately set up government. Small, local controlled governments, but they set up governments and legal systems.
Gates of the cities. Yep.
Yes, just like Moses did. So we've got to spend time getting to know the culture in which these people lived. And in the case of the Bible, if you want to rightly understand what's going on in the New Testament, you at least have to know these stories of the old. A very famous example, when the Pharisees are accusing the Messiah of doing wrong on the Sabbath, he says, haven't you read when David and the men ate the showbread from the temple, which was illegal for them to eat? He's expecting them to know that story. And he's expecting them to understand the second order thinking is, well, why did David do that? And why wasn't he condemned for it? Well, David did it because the men were hungry and he had to preserve life. Oh, there's a higher order of, you see, when I was in school, especially Catholic school, I was taught the smallest sin is as bad as the biggest sin. Well, I wasn't reading my Bible back then. The Messiah himself told me that there are weightier matters of the law. There are some sins that are worse than others. There are some things that I'm expected to do before others. And that's what he was pointing out. David preserved life, which the Messiah implies is a good thing. Because in that conversation, he says, so is it unlawful to do good on the Sabbath? And then he heals the man. So he was reasoning with them in a very Hebraic way, using the stories of the Old Testament. And he expected the audience to understand. This is why a lot of times the Messiah gets very impatient with his disciples and the apostles, because he expects them to understand and they don't. And then the things they see physically, he expects them, okay, well, if you won't understand the stories, then understand what you see. And they still don't understand what they see. If we don't have these things in our minds, we can't understand the scriptures properly. And what happens is we fill in. And as soon as you start filling in, you've assumed the seat of God, of Yahweh. And now you're writing scripture. However innocently, that's irrelevant. That's still what we're doing, which is why I tell you, it is okay to say, I don't know. I know of it, but I don't understand it. And you stick it over here on this. I know about it, but I don't know what to make of it yet shelf. That shelf should be full of things. The shelf that I know it and I think I understand it very well, that shelf shouldn't have a whole lot of things on it. Okay. And, the top part of that bookcase where it says, I know this, Yahweh and the Son and blah, blah, blah. That might be about the only thing that should be up there. Okay. And then the shelves underneath it, I think I know this. So be okay with that. Learn to be okay with that, because that's a very Hebraic way of thinking. Okay. It's a very Hebrew way of obtaining knowledge and wisdom. They don't think like a Greek. They don't think it's either true or false. They think differently. Okay. And there can be many things that are true and only one thing false, or there can be many things that are false and only one thing true. It
Joe, can you hear us? Because you're frozen on our end. Let's see. I don't know if he can hear us or what's going on his end. So just we're experiencing technical difficulties. Please stand by. We'll give him just a couple seconds, and if not, I'm going to go to break. I'm going to go to break, and that way he can pick it up when we get back. Okay, hold on a second, folks. Joe is having some issues, and I'm trying to get this to come up on my computer here. So, and we'll try to continue on here. All right, let's see. Unfortunately, I was not able to log into Bible Gateway under the credential. Oh, there he's back. So maybe he'll be able to take over here. So you need to send me a new password for Bible Gateway because apparently the one I've got is an old one. So.
We
But
might
anyway.
have a problem with Bible Gate, folks. I'm sorry that I was just told that there were some password issues when I tried to sign back in with.
Me too. That I just tried to sign in and it told me the password was wrong. So I don't know what happened. That's weird.
I don't know anybody that. Okay, so either we were over to Target, which I doubt, or Yahweh was telling me to shut my mouth and keep going.
Who knows? I don't know.
So let's get this next chapter out of the way, folks. We have more trouble with our internet problems. And oh, by the way, there was nothing wrong with the internet. I was able to check that using my phone. My computer just booted me out of the system altogether, just said, heck on you. And I just restarted it yesterday. So me and electronics. Chapter 34, verse 1. Now Dinah, or I'm believing it's Dinah, the daughter of Leah, whom she had borne to Jacob, went
Dina
out to
in Hebrew, but it don't matter.
Okay. Went out to visit the daughters of the land. So she's going to go out and hang out with the girls, right? When Shechem, the son of Hamor, the Hivite, the prince of the land, saw her, he took her and lay with her by force, aka he raped her. And she's probably pretty young here. He was deeply attracted to Dinah and the daughter of Jacob, and he loved the girl and spoke tenderly to her. And remember, love in their case is not necessarily just an emotional feeling. So he's probably pretty much, I want her. She's mine. So Shechem spoke to his father Hamor, saying, get me this young girl for a wife. Now Jacob heard that he had defiled Dinah, his daughter, but his sons were with his livestock in the field. So Jacob kept silent until they came in. Then Hamor, the father of Shechem, went out to Jacob to speak with him. This is all in keeping with their traditions of how you acquire a bride. It says, now the sons of Jacob came in from the field when they heard it, and the men were grieved, and they were very angry because he had done a disgraceful thing in Israel. In Israel. The people are now considered Israel. So, and in the region and where they lived is going to be considered Israel now. It says, by lying with Jacob's daughter, for such a thing ought not be done. Now, the scripture just tells us that shouldn't be done. That's a cultural norm. At this point in time, it's not been given as a commandment in scripture. I am pretty sure that they knew that this wasn't something that should be done. But I'm just pointing out that at this point in time, your scripture's not written as though this was a commandment. So just keep in mind how things progress through the scriptures. Yes, sir.
There was still cultural norms around there in what was that, Hammurabi's code or whatever, and things like that.
Oh, yeah.
May have already been in place, so that there was some cultural norms and.
But notice what you just said. And the
right.
Scripture acknowledges it's a cultural norm.
Right.
But now, since this is Shechem is the ruler of this region, and this, Haman or Hamor is the prince, that doesn't necessarily mean it was a law that he can't do this. And remember what we're told with Pharaoh said, hey, man, maybe the men would have lined with your wife and we would have brought, whatever. If you'll notice and pay attention, because we're going to see some of this, for whatever reason, the scriptures imply that women don't always have a choice in what's going on, because otherwise we have to assume that the women are just loose. That most all these women in these stories are just little sluts. Because like when Ham goes in and lays with Noah's wife, did she not know that was something she shouldn't do? Or was she taken against her will?
Right.
This is what I mean by the scripture invites you to reason through that. So we see a lot of stories where men lies with a girl that he shouldn't be lying with. Are we supposed to just assume that these women are just, oh, well, he asked, I got to give it to him? No.
Yeah. Yeah, in
Like
some
in this case,
cultures, like, you're talking about Islam, where you've talked about that the
yep,
past few weeks, that women are considered just property. They have no
yes,
rights, no, will kind of things, So, I'm not saying that's correct, but that is culturally the way it is in certain cultures. So,
yes.
that's,
Natasha says Noah didn't get onto his wife so that that could be a hint. I don't know. We just because the scriptures doesn't say it doesn't mean you can
right.
necessarily assume it. Okay. Because he does curse the child for it because of it.
Yeah.
So, and the child, the way we look at things, would have been innocent in that case.
Right.
What he's
Right. Yeah.
actually cursing is the outcome of the
The
action.
outcome. Right. The outcome. Right.
Yes. And this is how the scriptures invite us to think through all of this. And here's the point of Genesis: we're going from a time of lawlessness toward a time of ordered civil society through the stories of the nation Israel's Genesis. And that's the point. As we see Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, the sons, as they move toward becoming a people, they also move more and more toward order and lawfulness in a way of conducting themselves. And we see how they get there. So then eventually, when they come out of Egypt into the Exodus, that's when we get the law. Okay,
Mm.
you've seen your history. Now, here's how we avoid that in the future.
Yeah. And this is
And
something
it's,
that I've been learning. I shared on the Signal chat that Bible Project thing, and
mm-hmm,
one of the things that they talked about that I don't know why I've never made this connection before, but in Michael Heiser, hits this a lot, talking about us as humans as imagers of Yahweh, and it says in Genesis we're made in his image and things like that. The connection I never made that they made in this podcast is, you're talking about, the idols and stuff like that of these other gods and such, and how they're, spoken of as images and things like that. That's the reason why we're not supposed to have these images, because we are that image. And
yes,
that's what our purpose is we are to be those images of Yahweh. And what does an image do? What does it represent? It represents that God, that
right.
figure, that Elohim. And really they can speak and act on behalf of that God.
Yes,
And
that's
that's
the
really
idea.
what we're supposed to be. And so when you put that into perspective in these stories we see our failure in not fulfilling that role, and how that messes things up. And when we do fulfill that role, how things go so well, and things like that. So that's something that, that hit me with a ton of bricks when I put those two together. I mean, why didn't I see this before? This is so simple, but it makes so much sense. And these are the types of things, and they even connected it with the ark, the Noah's ark and the Ark of the Covenant, and how the arks in that time were the containers for these images. And you see how those things interlock and stuff.
Yeah,
Man,
they're
amazing
protective.
stuff. Yeah.
Yes.
So cool stuff.
And it's all in your scriptures, but it's asking you, the scriptures are written in a way that beckons you, invites you to reason past just what the story says. That's how this is supposed to work. That's how the Hebrew does philosophy. Tells you a story and invites you to think about what went right, what went wrong, why was it wrong, why was it right, how did it benefit or harm, blah, 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 blah. That's what it means to rightly divide the word. So, verse 8. But Hamor spoke with them, saying, the soul of my son Shechem longs for your daughter. Please give her to him in marriage. Intermarry with us. Give your daughters to us, and take our daughters for yourself. Thus you shall live with us, and the land shall be open before you. Live and trade in it, and acquire property in it. This is an invitation to become one people. Not the Canaanites becoming part of Israel, but the Israelites becoming part of Canaanites. Shechem also said to her father and to her brothers, Jacob and Simeon, Levi, if I find favor in your sight, then I will give whatever you say to me. Ask me ever so much bridal payment and gift, and I will give according as you say to me, but give me the girl in marriage. So he's desperate. We know these stories. He's Twitter-pated, as they say in the story of Bambi. But Jacob's sons answered Shechem and his father Hamor with deceit. Well, I guess they didn't fall far from the tree, because Jacob, deceitful or whatever, because he had defiled Dinah, their sister. So they're angry. They're plotting revenge. They said to them, we cannot do this thing, to give our sister to one who is uncircumcised, for that would be a disgrace to us. See, now that's not entirely untrue. It says, only on this condition will we consent to you, if you will become like us, in that every male of you be circumcised. That's physically like them. Then we will give our daughters to you, and we will take your daughters for ourselves, and we will live with you and become one people. Told you, this is about becoming one people. That's a no-no. Yahweh's not going to be happy with that. It says, but if you will not listen to us to be circumcised, then we will take our daughters and go. Okay, so now their words seemed reasonable to Hamor and Shechem. Hamor's son, the young man, did not delay to do the thing because he was delighted with Jacob's daughter. Now he was more respected than all the household of his father. So the people of that city respected him. So Hamor and his son Shechem came to the gate of their city and spoke to the men of their city, saying, these men are friendly with us, Jacob and his sons. Therefore, let them live in the land and trade in it, for behold, the land is large enough for them. Let us take their daughters in marriage and give our daughters to them. Only on this condition will the men consent to us to live with us, to become one people. I had this highlighted all the way there, because that's important. That every male among us be circumcised as they are circumcised. So this is what has to happen. And then it says, now here's the part that suggests there might be a little something going on here. It says, will not their livestock and their property and all their animals be ours? Now in our world, we might think, well, they're trying to acquire Jacob's riches, that this is deceitful. Yes and no. When you intermarry in their culture and you become one people, there's a little bit of, well, if somebody in your one people falls on hard times, it's expected of you to take care of them, feed them, clothe them, etc., etc. So in other words, it would be, wouldn't their resources become part of our communal resources? So you can read this several different ways. And it could be, even in their time, this could be deceitfulness on their part. But so far, other than the rape, we don't see any cultural signs that Shechem and Hamor are acting disingenuously. We are told that Simeon and Levi are. So this could be nothing more than a cultural, hey, this could be a good thing to intermarry with them. So let's go ahead and get circumcised. And it continues. Only let us consent to them, and they will live with us. All who went out of the gate of his city listened to Hamor and to his son Shechem, and every male was circumcised. All who went out of the gate of his city. Now that all who went out of his gate, that's another idiom, and it could mean everybody that had come to the gate to hear the saying. What's implied there, if you understand the way the language talks, there are a few males that probably were not there, but these are going to be your malcontents, the ones who wouldn't go to a city meeting to discuss something really important in your city that's going on, or you wouldn't go to vote or whatever. These are the ones who wouldn't be at the gate, are going to be very irresponsible people within the community. So now it came about on the third day. So here we go again, 3 and 7, when they were in pain, they're healing, that two of Jacob's sons, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, each took his sword and came upon the city unawares and killed every male. So they caught him by surprise, and they killed all the men in the city. They killed Hamor and his son Shechem with the edge of the sword and took Dinah from Shechem's house. So they, apparently Shechem had kept her, and they went forth. So they, in their eyes, they rescue her. Jacob's sons came upon the slain and looted the city because they had defiled their sister. So this implies that the rest of the brothers came upon the city, the slain looted the city. They took their flocks and their herds and their donkeys, that which was in the city and that which was in the field, and they captured and looted all the wealth and all the little ones, meaning children, and their wives, even all that was in the houses. Okay, now this gets into more cultural things. Is this justified to murder because of a rape? Okay, well, I don't know their culture right now. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Is it justified to kidnap the people and to loot the houses? Well, in their world, if you lost a battle, yes, that was just what you did. So where is the ugliness of Jacob's sons here? Is it in the murder? Well, for Simeon and Levi, I kind of think it is. The deception and everything else. But are the rest of the sons guilty for what they've done? Looting things when they came across the destroyed city? I don't know. I haven't been able to research enough of the culture here, but I know enough to say, okay, I know about this story. Let me hold it over here on this right-hand shelf of mine where I'm not, I know about it, but I don't know what to make of it. It says, then Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, you have brought trouble on me by making me odious among the inhabitants of the land, among the Canaanites and the Perizzites. And my men, being few in number, they will gather together against me and attack me, and I will be destroyed, I and my household. So apparently Jacob wasn't happy with what they did. They said, should he treat our sister as a harlot? Now, here's second order thinking. Jacob is still fearful, not trusting Yahweh. And the brothers, whether they handled this right or not, were thinking about righteousness, not the consequences of upholding righteousness. So this story invites you to wrestle with it and to draw from it what you will. Yes, sir.
Yeah, and I was going to say too, with this, taking of the little ones and the women and such, if all the males were killed, it actually is merciful to take them into your custody, because if you had left them with no males, they would have no protection, and any others would just come and wipe them out, take advantage of them, whatever. So that in their culture and society would probably be okay. Now, what Jacob or Israel was worried about here is the other tribes around there finding out about this and becoming angry because he had just wiped out an entire tribe. And, that would not have been looked upon very well. So yeah, you've got this, you got this thing going on, he's looking at that from the, physical reality, but, Levi
he's
and
still not
Simon
trusting Yahweh to take care of him.
Right. I mean, it was, Shechem did do a horrible thing, and whether
Charlie,
taking out the entire tribe is justified for this single rape.
Do you know what we have here in this?
Shechem? Yeah,
you know what we have here in this story? This story invites you to wrestle with my contention that morality and ethics are not the same thing.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Righteousness versus the law and or custom. Mm-hmm. They're not the same things.
Right.
Even though our dictionary says ethics and morality are the same, they are not. Not in my eyes.
Not. No.
So that's what this story and others like it are going to invite us to wrestle with.
Right.
Where is righteousness? That's morality, doing the right thing according to the Creator. Where's that? Where does that dwell? And where does ethics and morality and ethics and legality, obeying the law of man?
Yeah.
There's a divide there. And in this case, we're missing some of the background cultural context of what would have and would not have been acceptable.
Right.
Or expected.
Right. And I mean, I think that they were, justified in punishing Shechem for this, but, taking it to the point of basically eliminating an entire tribe, maybe that was too far.
Well, maybe also
these are
the
the things
more
we
for
have to
not
think
punishing
about
his
too.
son.
Yeah, well, yeah, well, that too,
But
uh,
everybody else?
yeah,
Yeah.
right, right.
Yeah.
But then again, perhaps because sometimes Yahweh, when families have those tendencies, He does take out an entire uh, a family line that's no
Or
longer
a people group.
continued. Yeah, because of wickedness like that. So, that there's a lot of this going on. We can't say for certain what was right and what was, but that's what this is about, is like you said, thinking about these issues and trying to wrestle with this and say, what was the right thing done here? What was the wrong thing? And then, you get the cultural thing.
Yeah.
It's gives you a lot to think about. That's um, the philosophical conflict going on here
Yes.
that we're
And
seeing.
we should resist the urge to interpret these stories in the Bible through our cultural lenses.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, this is one of the reasons we have so many problems today. It's like, well, this nation was founded on slavery. No, it wasn't. The nation was founded before slavery ever started in the United States. Slavery was forced upon it through a legal court case and then later through the crown and other things.
Yeah.
So we weren't founded on slavery. Plus, it wasn't just blacks who were enslaved, and it wasn't just whites who owned blacks. We've
Correct.
lost our history. And then if we're going to be so vehement against a certain skin color now because of the past, why aren't those people today who hate whites because of slavery hating on the blacks and the brown people in Africa right now who still own slaves
Mm,
in the
yeah.
Middle East and other Muslim countries who still to this day own slaves?
Yeah.
This is where we get ourselves sideways. And when we do that, we destroy justice because we destroy
Right.
reason. And that is not the purpose of Yahweh's imagers. And we bring dishonor and we tarnish the glory of the Father in the process when, as his people, we don't slow down and stop to try to rightly divide things.
Right.
Notice there's slavery in the biblical days, and it doesn't say anything about outlawing it or condemning the process, because a lot of times in their culture, slavery was a way of surviving. You could sell
Right.
yourself into indentured servitude.
Right. And again, we see in this narrative here that they took this upon themselves to do this. They did not consult Yahweh and say, "Okay, Yahweh, this guy did this. What should we do?"
Yes, they didn't
And
trust.
and
Yes.
seek his will on what should be done here. Had they done that, there may have been a different outcome, or it could have been the same outcome, but with Yahweh's blessing, and that kind of thing too. So, that's another part of this
Yep.
is us
Jacob and
relying
his
on our
family.
own man-made wisdom and so on and so forth, and not consulting Yahweh and in these uh, types of situations.
Yeah, Jacob and his family have yet to call on the name of Yahweh in all before they act. So, all right, this is where we're going to end for today. Tomorrow we're going to be in Jeremiah. I'm going to try to finish Jeremiah tomorrow. So if we have to run a little long, we have to run a little long, but we'll see. I don't remember how many chapters we have left and how in depth they are. If not, we'll only have one more week of Jeremiah. Thursday, I'm probably going to talk to you just off the cuff a little bit more about Islam. I still have a lot to say about Islam, so that's probably what we're going to do Thursday. We'll wrap Islam up. Friday, we're back in the Scepter and the Birthright, and after that show, I'm going to do a special on the 4th of July and the founding of the United States, with a focus on what the founding fathers had to say about us being a Judeo-Christian, mostly Christian nation. What they really had to say, not what your history teachers have told you, but what they wrote with their own pen or spoke with their own mouth and was later recorded. So I'm going to introduce you to some things that were uttered by founding fathers that might not be what you're expecting those men to have said. So that's what we're going to do. And we're also going to look at the biblical foundations of the Declaration of Independence and the United States Constitution, because they are both rooted in biblical theology. And we're going to hit a little bit on what the founding fathers thought this land was biblically, and what its role was and what its purpose was. And we might even hit a little bit on the prophetic implications of the United States of America. Because I think it's this land, this area, this piece of the earth upon which we live, I think it was promised to David's descendants by Yahweh in your Bible. And Allen has already, J.H. Allen, The Scepter and the Birthright book, he's already cited that passage for you. And it does not apply to the Holy Land. It's different. It's a different piece of the land. Now, he thinks it's England. I don't. He didn't keep following the passages. There's more scripture to cover Ephraim afterwards, but it's okay. It's all right. We'll get to it. So we thank you for being with us. If you like what we're doing, hit the like buttons, share the show. If you're new, make sure you subscribe. If you haven't already done so, make sure you hit the bell, or you might not know when we do the next shows, the extra additional shows, because I'm also going to try and put one out in the near future on finishing up the calendar. And we're going to have some specials with my friend in New Zealand and a buddy of mine talking about the Council of Nicaea coming up. Those will all probably be additional shows that we do. They may not go live. You might have to catch the replays, or, it'll depend on how we can work all these things out. But we'll get it all done. We'll keep you informed. So until we see each other again, wherever that may be, y'all stay safe. Take care. Hopefully we see you tomorrow. If not, whenever. Yahweh bless. We love you. Bye-bye.